Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting, subcommittee meeting for specialized learning. It is October 24th at 5:38 p.m. We are going to be continuing our workshops that we started a month ago and going over our reviews for specialized learning. And with us today is my fellow board member, Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig. I also have with me Ms. Bridget Adams, Director of Specialized Learning, who will be taking care of the meeting today. So I will turn it over to you to continue and introduce anyone else. And
very good. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining virtually. And of course, those of our families who have joined us in person. We also appreciate your patience as we work through the logistics of running a hybrid meeting, both in person and virtually. I do know that many of you are joining us through the Zoom feature, and that we did, in fact, have a bit of a glitch with our Zoom link. So I know some of you have just transitioned over from a different Zoom link to this one. So welcome. We're very glad you're here. You can't see Deirdre McKinnon. She is the education administrator for specialized learning, and she is along the direction of where my hand is pointing, working behind the scenes to help us support our technology. And so we're grateful to her for being here. And we have in person an interpreter to interpret in Spanish for us, and I'll have her introduce herself.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Mariela Schrier y mucho gusto estar aquí con ustedes.
And online through the Zoom, we do have a breakout room with Haitian Creole interpreters, and we welcome all of our family members who are taking advantage of that feature. And so families who are joining us in person, I realize that this format is a little bit strange. And so we thank you for bearing with us as we work to learn the best way to do this. This evening, we will share a presentation on the screen, and I will talk through the second part of the welcome to Norwalk Public Schools special education process. So I'll summarize our conversation from last time. Deirdre, are you sharing?
This one?
Great.
The other one.
That's the one.
Okay.
And so if you will, at any point, if I talk too long, just stop me. I don't ever feel like you can.
Just what you would like me to say, just look at me and then know that it
Okay.
will be my turn to go.
Very good. And I am going to do my best to do that in small parts. So welcome, everyone. This is the second part of a workshop series that introduces our community to the specialized learning department.
Bienvenidos. Este es un taller donde vamos a hablar del proceso general de la educación especial aquí en las escuelas públicas de Norwalk.
And so with every meeting, we begin with a moment to reflect on our beliefs in specialized learning. For the purposes of time this evening, I invite you to enjoy some very updated photos of our young people at the bottom of the screen.
Como en todas nuestras presentaciones, comenzamos con un momento de reflexión donde podemos ver fotos de algunas de las cosas que pasan con nuestros estudiantes.
And through our beliefs of specialized learning, we work tirelessly to envision how specialized learning looks, feels, and seems in our classrooms every day.
A través de la visión de nuestro aprendizaje especializado, podemos construir un mundo mejor para nuestros estudiantes de Norwalk y prepararlos para todos los aspectos de la vida.
And it is through this vision that we work toward our mission of providing excellent and equitable education for all students.
A través de esta visión es que nosotros trabajamos para poder proporcionar a nuestros estudiantes una educación que sea equitable para todos.
In our first workshop, we introduced the team, and I won't spend a great deal of time reviewing those slides, but the slide deck is here for your review. And as Deirdre moves through these slides, you'll see the faces and contact information for the team members.
Estas son las caras de nuestras personas que trabajan en el programa de educación especializada, que ya lo hemos visto en la presentación anterior y ustedes ya están familiarizados con ellos.
Important to know in all regard when needing to contact someone in the department is really the list of people right here that you would need to contact. So if ever you have a question about if you're a student who has an IEP, the case manager is the best first person to reach out to.
Entonces aquí ustedes ven a quién deben de contactar primero. La persona con la que primero deben de contactarse es la persona que está a cargo del caso de sus hijos.
And for a young person who doesn't have an IEP, the general education teacher is typically the first person to whom you would contact.
Y para un estudiante que no tenga todavía un plan individualizado, es a la maestra de educación especial que ustedes deben de contactar.
Bridget,
Yes.
just a question.
Please.
That if somebody were to be new to the system and coming in and they didn't have the opportunity to come to this meeting,
Mhm.
then how easy is it for them to get these slides?
That's an excellent question. So we should find a way to publish these slides following this meeting in some public manner. And I
Mhm.
don't know yet what that is, if there is a place within the public mailing that comes from central office that we can attach the slide deck, but we should discuss that. So we could make each of the slide decks public record.
I say that because recently I had a parent reach out to me and she was unable to meet with me yesterday and she said, I'll see you later next week. And I would have, if we had a chance to talk, I would have said, come to this meeting. But if you would let us know
Certainly.
how we can access this. It's really important information.
And this information under a different format is accessible on our website.
Okay.
But I think what we could do is publish these slide decks to our website as well.
Yes.
With the date and associate them with the subcommittee meetings.
That would be
I think that's a really good idea.
We do that in some other of our committee meetings.
That's great.
Very, very helpful to study this because it takes a little time for anyone to figure out how to navigate.
Yes.
And what is on my heart is that there's so much available that's excellent. And we want all of those who need it to have a chance to plug in.
Yes.
And so I think that's a big part of the message. You have the expertise, you can help. And part of what we are doing is that communication.
Yeah, agreed. So we will absolutely ensure that we figure out how to get at all of this public, because many of my slide decks, when I present, include live links. And I'll show some of those
That's
this
great
evening,
too.
because the resources are linked and embedded into the slide deck. So
And then your answers to some the questions are so illuminating.
and I think you can watch those in Syndicate on YouTube if ever you were so interested. I want to make sure, and pardon me, this is part of our technical workings, and we have a wizard in the wings. If we are visible, and I do believe we are, I just want to turn the camera because I want to ensure that folks can see you.
Oh, thank you. A lot of them know me already, man. Thank you.
Well, I think it's important.
Thank
You're
you.
an important voice in our conversation right now. And I think it's really necessary. So pardon me while I.
Of course. La señora Bridget quiere asegurarse de que ustedes me puedan ver también en la cámara y ellos están hablando de cómo van a compartir esta presentación de alguna forma en línea para que todos ustedes puedan tener esta información también.
I can't see it. I'm trying to do it, but I don't. I'm like a blind robot. Do you? Okay. I think I did it. I think I did it. Thank you, everyone. This is a true family. We're working this through together. Very good. So the rest of this slide, that's perfect, perfect.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, everybody.
Very good. And any families, if you want your moment and you feel like you're cut out of the screen, please come closer because I would love for you. I think Brenda Lynn cut you a little bit. So this slide just shows us beyond reaching out to the case manager or the gen ed teacher, the order of operations, so to speak, of the folks that you would reach out to for any support.
Entonces, esta imagen nos muestra el orden en el que debemos de contactar a las personas luego de la persona encargada del caso de su hijo y la maestra de educación general, luego a quienes van a ir a contactar.
So we spoke about there being live links embedded into the presentations. This was shared in the first, and I share it again because it is such a great resource. This blue link at the top of this slide is a link to the state training module on individualized education plans for parents. And so much of the information that is shared within this module, we share this evening. And I invite all families for that, to engage in that opportunity to watch this module.
La señora dice que el enlace en azul que está arriba es en vivo y es para que ustedes puedan entrar y ver una guía para los padres de el programa de educación individualizado de sus hijos.
And throughout the module, special education is defined, and we often discuss that special education means specially designed instruction at no cost to the parent to meet the unique needs of the child with a disability.
En esa presentación también está definido lo que es educación especial y como lo ven aquí, significa instrucción designada especialmente individualmente para sus hijos a ningún costo para los padres.
With the federal law linked at the bottom.
Y abajo tiene el enlace para la información federal.
So thank you all for bearing with us because I do realize that some of that information is a bit redundant from our first workshop. But as we move through the series, I feel it's really important to always take a moment to reflect on our beliefs, our vision, our mission, and our work together as we introduce any specialized learning topic. And then, of course, bring those references and resources to the forefront.
Entonces, aunque sea un poquito repetitivo, creo que es muy importante volver a hablar de dar esta información al principio de la presentación, porque es muy importante reflejar en cuál es nuestra visión y cómo vamos a ir de ahí en adelante con nuestras creencias y nuestra visión y nuestra misión.
Last month, we spoke a great deal about an overview to special education as a whole. And tonight we're going to focus on the referral process, moving through referral and onto the development of an IEP.
Entonces, esta noche nos vamos a enfocar en cuál es el proceso de referido para los estudiantes.
And as we go through, if there are members of the conversation tonight who are online and have questions, certainly please raise your hand. Deirdre is doing a few tasks, but she's going to do her very best to create space for folks to come off mic and ask questions. We understand some of those questions might be delayed, but please hold on to them because we're going to do our best to answer all questions this evening.
It looks like there are two questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Entonces, queremos que participen las personas que están aquí como las que están presenciando esto desde su casa. Así que, por favor, si tienen preguntas, nos gustaría que las hagan.
It's rolled. You can get rid of that. Oh, good. Uh-oh.
There's an X at the top.
Yeah, just exit out.
Right, right there. Very good. Would you slide back just one slide? And of course, anyone here in the room interrupt at any point with any questions or thoughts. So prior to a referral to specialized education, the school is going to be working to ensure that students are receiving supports through interventions in the general education setting. And in those ways, the teams are working to identify areas for improvement for the students, specifically in the areas of academics or behavior. The teams will look to implement strategies and interventions before moving into the special education process. And throughout the entire intervention prior to the referral, we'll be monitoring student progress. Feel free to summarize that in the best way.
Antes del proceso del referido, lo que va a hacer el equipo de profesional que trabajan con sus hijos, sus estudiantes, es poner intervenciones de programas para tratar de ayudarlos primero, para tratar de que mejoren en la parte académica y también implementar estrategias alternativas a las intervenciones y monitorear el proceso de su estudiante antes del referido.
In Norwalk, we have a very specific SRBI or scientific research-based intervention program. Embedded here within this slide is a link to all of our resources. Dr. Debbie Perry is the education administrator for SRBI, and her contact information is there. So if you have any concerns regarding your students' academic or behavioral or functional progress, we do invite you to learn about our intervention process. We invite you to contact your school. And of course, Dr. Perry is the person who supervises this program for our district.
Nosotros usamos un programa de intervención basado en la parte científica, en investigación científica. La persona que está a cargo de este programa en Norwalk, que es la doctora Debbie Perry. Ella es la administradora de este programa basado en investigación científica que usamos aquí en Norwalk.
Thank you. This is a graphic that is available on the website that outlines the different levels of intervention that do occur. Tier 1 occurring in the classroom, Tier 2 typically also often occurring in the classroom, but perhaps in a small group setting. And I am speaking very generally and broadly. This is a much deeper conversation and probably a workshop unto itself. Tier 3 interventions are typically separate from the whole group. And we work in cycles of support for individuals in an attempt to fill any skill gaps or move students' progress forward.
Estos son los niveles de intervención. Como ustedes pueden ver, están en español también. Y son instrucciones y currículos de calidad diferenciados para satisfacer las necesidades de todos los estudiantes en el nivel 1. En el nivel 2 demuestran apoyo suplementado por 20 o 30 minutos durante 2 o 3 días a la semana. El nivel 3 requiere apoyo de intervención diaria con instrucción directa y un grupo más pequeño para acelerar el desarrollo de una habilidad en particular.
This slide asks who makes a referral. If a young person has engaged in the intervention process at school, either for academics or behavioral needs, and the school team is feeling as though the progress is not happening at a rate at which is allowing the student to catch up or work with a typical peer group, the school may make a referral to specialized instruction, to PPT, to special education, so that a team can work to determine whether or not there is a disability.
¿Quién hace el referido? Como pueden ver aquí, puede ser un padre, un tutor, puede ser un estudiante que tenga más de 18 años, personal de la escuela, individuos de otras agencias como doctores, trabajadores sociales con el permiso de un padre.
And so that SRBI process, that intervention process, will lead a school to consider referral. However, a parent can make a referral at any time they feel is necessary, as can the student themselves, if they are their own guardian and over 18 years of age, or any other individual who is involved in that student's life, a doctor or a social worker or a counselor. And I think I did hear you with the best I've got. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. The referrals to special education do need to be in writing. And so if a parent makes a referral in a verbal manner, the school team will work with the family to complete the referral document.
Este referido debe de ser por escrito y puede ser, lo puede hacer un padre, y si necesita ayuda, el distrito siempre va a estar disponible para ayudar a las personas que necesiten escribir un referido.
This is a draft view of that referral document that every family does receive before or at the meeting in which the referral is reviewed. It doesn't look exactly like this, but it is quite similar to our new system.
Este es un ensayo de una forma de referido para que ustedes vean cómo se ve. No es exactamente así, pero es muy similar a esta forma.
And we are documenting the specific concerns brought by the person referring, any alternative strategies attempted, those outcomes, and any history of intervention that may have occurred in this young person's life.
Entonces, lo que se documenta aquí es cuáles son las inquietudes de la persona que hace el referido, las preocupaciones, cuáles son las áreas de preocupación y cuáles son las intervenciones que han sido usadas hasta el momento.
There are a few resources within this slide deck that we reviewed a bit at the last workshop, and I've left here for reference, but won't belabor too much this evening. But what is important for our conversation now is to reiterate that upon the date that the referral is made, a clock starts, and that clock is counting 45 school days from the date of referral. So for example, if a parent calls me and says, Ms. Adams, I have a concern about my young person. I would like the school to call a PPT to consider my student for assessment or for special education. I communicate then with the school. This is the day one. This is the date the clock starts. The school team, together with the family, has 45 school days to engage in all of these activities on this slide. Meet to review the referral, obtain written consent from a parent to evaluate if it's determined that that's appropriate, then conduct that comprehensive evaluation, meet again to determine eligibility, obtain a second written consent for the school to provide services if the student is eligible, develop and write an IEP, and allow 15 days, 5 for the writing of the IEP and 10 for the parents to review the IEP. By the 45th day, that IEP must be implemented. It's a pretty quick turnaround. That is an awful lot to interpret, and I am sorry.
Luego que se hace el referido, hay 45 días para empezar a implementarlo. Del día primero, 45 días hábiles o días de escuela. Desde el inicio del referido, el equipo en la escuela tiene 45 días para repasar el referido en una reunión de planeamiento, que es PPT. También tienen que obtener el consentimiento de uno de los padres o tutores para poder hacer una evaluación. Si se determina que es necesaria una evaluación, se le hace una evaluación muy comprensiva muy general de todo y luego se determina si en un equipo si el estudiante es elegible para recibir algún tipo de servicio. Se obtiene se obtiene el permiso del padre también para los servicios de educación especial. Se escribe un plan individualizado de educación y en el día 45 ya tienen que comenzar los servicios si el estudiante los necesita.
Bridget, may I make, one comment on this? When you look at this method and this timetable, a key takeaway, if I were a parent, is that the parent is at the center of this. Step 2 is obtain consent from the parent. So at any time the parent is oppositional to this idea, then that's where it stops. So the parent is never overridden by this opportunity.
Absolutely. Do you want to interpret that?
Sí, yes. El padre es el que tiene la última palabra. Si durante este proceso el padre no estuviera de acuerdo con algunos de los resultados, el padre siempre puede parar el proceso si no está de acuerdo.
Throughout this entire process, the procedural safeguards are built into the special education process to protect the rights of the student and the parent. That's right. And the parent has the right to be a meaningful participant in this entire process.
El padre siempre va a estar incluido en todas las decisiones que se vayan a hacer. Es una persona fundamental en todo este proceso. Siempre se lo va a incluir y tomar en cuenta para todos.
This is one of the resource slides that I include. This is the process. I shared this last time and share it again for reference that we as a district use as our protocol. We use this in our training capacity with our new staff, and we use this as reference in all of our work through the referral process.
Este es el recibo del referido y lo usamos aquí en Norwalk y todo el personal lo usa también.
And another graphic of the timeline for reference.
Aquí tienen también cómo es la línea de referido, cómo es el tiempo, qué es lo que se hace primero, qué es lo que se hace después.
The timeline's pretty important. And we adhere to this in all regard. There are times where we have circumstances where the timeline is extended. For example, you can see on this graphic that the timeline does pause for up to 10 days if we do not receive consent from family. Once the form is sent to the family for consent to evaluate, the clock will pause until we receive it back. That's probably the easier way. Yeah.
Entonces, a veces se puede extender el tiempo de los 45 días si no han recibido todavía el documento de consentimiento de parte del padre. A veces hay que esperar un poco y se hace un poquito más de 45 días.
And the same is true with the consent for services. The timeline only pauses while we wait to receive it back.
El tiempo para mientras esperan recibir consentimiento.
Admittedly, and especially in the current climate of circumstances where there are shortage areas in special education, there are times when we work very hard to secure evaluators, specifically in areas where we may not have personnel, but do have to seek outside support. And that can put us in a position where the timeline is paused or is extended. It doesn't actually pause, and we do always communicate with families and ask for grace and work collaboratively to move forward. A very specific example I might share where that could occur is if, as a student has the right to be assessed in their native language, we don't have an evaluator on staff who speaks that language. and we need to hire someone, contract with someone to come in to do the evaluation. That can at times impact our timeline.
A veces hay factores que también tienen un impacto en la línea del tiempo. A veces es difícil conseguir evaluadores o personas que hacen las evaluaciones. No hay, a veces estamos cortos de personal y necesitamos conseguir personal fuera de las escuelas públicas de Norwalk que nos ayude. En ese caso, a veces se retrasa un poquito, pero siempre estamos en contacto con la familia para informarlos. Otro ejemplo muy claro es cuando un estudiante tiene el derecho de que le hagan la evaluación en su idioma de dominio y a veces no tenemos un evaluador que hable el idioma del estudiante, entonces eso nos hace retrasar un poquito el proceso de toda la evaluación.
I am incredibly proud of our teams here in Norwalk Public Schools to almost always meet this timeline. And it's really impressive that we have that data.
Muy orgullosa del personal de Norwalk, que siempre tratamos de estar dentro de los 45 días y casi siempre se hace.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about the timelines where it says if requested for the evaluation 3 days prior to. How do parents know that they have the ability to request the evaluation?
That's a great question. So I'm trying to find where it says if requested.
In the parentheses, next to number 8.
Minimum 3 days. Oh, if requested. Okay, that's interesting. So this is a graphic published by the state that I borrowed from that parent module that I shared at the beginning of the meeting. And it threw me that it says if requested because it's a Norwalk mandate.
Okay,
So that might be why
Okay,
we in Norwalk Public Schools not only strive to meet the 3 days, offering all evaluations to families 3 days. Our goal is 5. We do a full 5 business days along with the opportunity to review each evaluation with the evaluator. So I think that there may be some places that ask a parent to request it, but we do not. We just do it as a matter of course.
if I can be helpful, when you publish this, it should somewhere be like what is specified for Norwalk.
Will do.
So that parents understand that it's an expectation.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Entonces, una vez que los padres tienen los reportes, tienen un periodo, ahí dice 3 días, pero la señora dice que son 5 días para poder repasar los reportes antes de la reunión.
Thank you.
There might be a question in the chat.
Okay. It's hard to do it from.
Oh, that's Imelda. Hola, Imelda, ¿cómo estás? She's saying greetings to me because I know her.
Oh,
It's nice to see you again. How can I appeal for my child so that he can receive intervention daily?
that's a wonderful question.
Muy buena
Ex-
pregunta.
Thank you. I don't want to go into specifics about your child, but I will answer generally and certainly request that any family who is seeking intervention for their child, that they reach directly to their teacher, whoever the person is at the school who is your direct line of communication should be the person you start with the request for intervention.
Entonces, el pedido de intervención tiene que comenzar con la persona que directamente está trabajando con tu hijo, la persona que más lo ve y que lo conoce. Con esa persona hay que comenzar.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
So someone has made a referral to special education, perhaps the school, perhaps the parent, perhaps an important person in the child's life, perhaps the child themselves. And now it is the job of the school team to collaborate with the family to schedule a meeting to formally review that referral.
Entonces, alguien ha hecho un referido inicial para ese estudiante, ya sea un padre o un profesional o alguien que trabaja en la escuela. Entonces, ahora hay que determinar si el estudiante debe de ser evaluado para a ver si es elegible. Entonces, hay una reunión de planeamiento inicial.
It is the job of this meeting, the folks at this meeting, to determine whether the student must be evaluated for eligibility.
En esta reunión se va a decidir si hay que evaluar al estudiante para ver si es elegible.
There are times where families will share evaluations that they've had conducted already, and the team may decide that they have enough data to make a decision right then and there.
You mean privately?
Perhaps, or from enough. Yeah.
A veces los padres ya tienen evaluaciones de sus estudiantes de una escuela previa o de algún otro profesional y entonces no es necesario tener que hacerle la evaluación enseguida para determinar que necesitan servicios.
It's possible that the team will determine that the student isn't eligible or evaluation isn't warranted at this time. Sometimes there are additional steps or measures or interventions that can take place rather than the special education process.
A veces el equipo de planeamiento considera que en ese momento no es necesario todavía hacerle evaluaciones al estudiante, sino que van a usar primero algunas medidas de intervención.
And the team may decide, and remember, the team includes the parent. So the information that the parent is bringing to the table is equally, if not more important than any of the data that the school team is bringing. So collaboratively, with all of the information that the family brings, that the school brings, the decision may be made to design an evaluation to gather additional data to make that eligibility determination.
Estas decisiones se hacen con las opiniones de los profesionales que trabajan con su hijo, con los datos que han recogido y también el padre o la madre, la persona a cargo del niño es parte de ese equipo y también se lo considera para todas las decisiones que hayan que hacer. A veces se decide que sí, que es necesario y otras veces tal vez que no, pero el padre siempre se toma en cuenta como una persona muy valorada en el equipo.
Excellent. So if it is determined that a disability is suspected and evaluation is recommended, and it is now the time within this meeting to design the evaluation, the team will consider assessments, evaluations, tests that are necessary to gather data to answer these three questions. Does the student have a disability? To what extent does the disability adversely affect basic skill areas? And is the child's need significant enough to require specialized instruction?
Entonces, luego que se recogen todos esos datos, toda la información necesaria para decidir, hay que contestar las tres preguntas que están aquí. Si su hijo tiene una discapacidad, hasta qué, de qué forma esa discapacidad puede afectarlo en las diferentes capacidades de una forma adversa, y si el estudiante necesita instrucción especializada de una forma significativa.
Got you more water.
Oh, thank you.
Quite a bit. Okay.
Thank you. You're very sweet. Thank you.
Of course, of course. This evaluation that is designed must assess in all areas related to the suspected disability. So any area of concern that is brought at the meeting, we must evaluate.
Se debe de evaluar al estudiante en las áreas donde se sospecha que hay una discapacidad. En todas esas áreas es que hay que evaluarlo.
Information provided by the parent is absolutely taken into account.
Y la información proporcionada por el padre se toma también muy en cuenta.
We must evaluate in the child's native language or other means of communication. So for example, if a young person is deaf and signs, then the evaluation will occur with either a sign language interpreter or directly by someone who is fluent in sign.
Hay que evaluar al estudiante en su idioma de dominio o de la forma que mejor se comunica, como por ejemplo, si es un niño sordo mudo, se usaría el lenguaje de señas.
The tools that are used, the tests must be non-discriminatory in every way.
Las herramientas que se usan para hacer la evaluación tienen que ser no discriminatorias.
And use a variety of tools and strategies, not just one assessment method.
Y no solamente una forma de hacer la evaluación, sino usar diferentes herramientas y estrategias.
It's also important to note that determination for special education cannot be made on one single measure. There must be more than one measure.
Debe de haber más de una medida para poder evaluar al estudiante y medirlo, medir sus capacidades. Con una sola forma de medición no es suficiente.
Are you, Bridget, are you saying in this that certainly there are tests that the children will be taking, but is it kind of observational data from parents considered as one of the metrics?
Yes, so it's not formally, we don't ask parents to consent to use their own data. When we design an evaluation, we can only assess in any area that a parent has signed agreement to. So what we don't say is, would you like to use your observational data? Oh, you would, wonderful, please sign here. That data is just known to be assumed that we will be talking about it.
Okay.
So when we're reviewing assessments, parents' observations are either part of those assessments through interviews and they become part of the formal report, or families share that information at the meeting. And we invite them to share it in writing, verbally, in any way they choose. But because we're not, the parent doesn't have to sign off saying that they're going to use their own information. Yeah.
But
I have a
my,
question.
go ahead.
Do the teachers ever suggest evaluations for the kids for stuff that they see in the classrooms?
Certainly,
Okay.
certainly. Yes. At the table, like when we're at both. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If I could give an example, and I'm making this up. If a family comes to the table with a concern, I'll use myself, the child is not functioning where they should in math. And so we have this really in-depth conversation about an achievement assessment so that we can see where Bridget's functioning with her math ability and her math skill. It is very possible and probable that the school team will say, we'd like to look at all areas of her academic functioning, not just math. And a teacher may say, well, I do see those struggles in math and we've brought her through intervention. And even with all of that intervention, we agree with you. We don't see that she's working to where we would expect her to. And we also think that she might have some deficits in organization. There could be some executive functioning work that she needs. We'd like to propose that we look at that through evaluation as well. And so that's really how this conversation goes. This sharing, this giving, this taking, this, I see this, do you see that at home? And sometimes we'll see things at school that parents don't see at home, and vice versa. And so anybody at that table could potentially be recommending a test.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
I could speak to that. Very close communication with the teacher over some years, and, some banter back and forth. we come to a really sturdy conclusion in Foxrun School. Right, one of my two.
It's wonderful to hear.
Just
Thank you
like
for sharing
that, just like that. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know. What do you think? Summary statement?
Cuando se determina la elegibilidad, la señora dice que se toma en cuenta lo que los padres tengan que compartir, ya sea verbalmente o a través de cuestionarios que le dan a los padres para llenar sobre cómo ven a sus hijos en las casas. También los profesionales que trabajan con sus hijos, qué es lo que ellos han visto, qué programas de intervención han podido usar con sus hijos, y también por ejemplo, si ven que hay una discapacidad en el área de matemáticas, a veces los maestros sugieren que le hagan una evaluación académica en general, porque han visto que no solamente tiene dificultades en matemáticas, sino también en el área de funcional, como de organización. Entonces, todas esas contribuciones en la reunión se toman en cuenta. Thank you.
Get to my law.
Oh, yeah. I think we have a couple.
Next slide.
One more
Please.
question about if a parent sees something at home that's not being displayed during the school day, and they bring that concern to the team. If the team is not seeing any of that in school at all, where does that conversation go if the parent is still continuing to see issues at home that they're concerned about? But we all know that kids can kind of not do certain things in certain environments, and in certain environments they have different behaviors or things of that nature. So I'm just curious if there's a child who's not showing certain behaviors or things, or maybe they're masking or coming home, and what happens when a team is not seeing those things in school at all?
Right, it's pretty complex.
Yes.
Right, and the other way too. The school is seeing behavior, but you're not, a parent isn't
Right.
seeing it at home. We do understand that kids function different ways in different places and spaces. And as we build skills and increase skills behaviorally, functionally anyway, we hope that we're also working with young people to help them generalize those skills across settings. And so this is where that partnership with home becomes so critical. To directly answer your question, if the behavior is not impacting the student's access to education and they're making progress academically, while it may not require the intervention of special education within the purview of the school day, we know that we're talking about a whole human, right? And so this is where we start working really closely with families to look into places and ways that the school can offer and provide support so that we can help students generalize those skills at home. Because we know sometimes, and I'm an example of this, I was a very lovely child at school and then I went home. And my parents would try to explain this and no one saw it but them, because they're the safest place. Families are the safest place for our young people to be typically. And so they come home and mom and dad, guardians might see something very, very different. But this is where, if it doesn't speak to an accommodation or a modification to the school program, this is where we partner together to try to look for those supports. That was a very long-winded way to probably say something more succinctly. I apologize.
No, that's okay. La pregunta era que si una vez que el padre o la madre ven algo donde el niño pueda necesitar ayuda, alguna discapacidad o problemas de comportamiento, y la escuela o el equipo que trabaja con el estudiante determina de que el estudiante no se comporta de esa forma en la escuela, que no tiene ninguna dificultad para su rendimiento académico. Entonces, ahí muchas veces pasa que los estudiantes en la casa, porque es un lugar seguro, pueden portarse de la forma que quieran, mientras que en la escuela tienen que portarse de la forma que se espera de ellos. Ahí se toma el niño en general como una persona que tenga diferentes necesidades en la escuela o en la casa y se buscan programas de acomodación o de intervención.
Thank you. I did see that there was a question in the Q&A, and I don't know if those questions, when we select them, are broadcast. And to protect the privacy of the person, I saw that there was a name and some information about their young person. I would like to invite that person to give us a call. I'd love to speak more directly about your question. And just for the general good, the question was in regard to some concerns around students' progress, and the question, will they at some point learn, and I'm using my words, perhaps at grade level or like their classmates. And so ultimately, the work of special education is in fact to build independence. And this is a plan that is put into place when a student is eligible for special education to help them increase their strategies, their skill level, and their ability, so that ultimately, in as many cases as possible, they reach independence and no longer require the support of this plan. Of course, there are eligibility areas where a student may have an IEP through the June date following their 22nd birthday. But every individual is every individual. And I would love to talk further to the person who did leave that question in the chat. So thank you for that.
Hubo una pregunta en el chat y la señora dice que le gustaría abordar esa pregunta de una forma privada porque no quiere que se vean nombres de los participantes, pero que la elegibilidad va a depender de muchas cosas y se trata cada caso individualmente.
We have discussed the referral process, how we come to the table to review a referral, the process of evaluation, and we were just stepping into a brief conversation about determining eligibility for special education. I'm thoughtful about the time, and I defer to the people to my left.
Are people who are here, can you stay a little later?
I'm gonna head out.
Okay, thanks.
Call me.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
very good.
We can continue for a little bit.
Thank you so much. Very good, thank you. So following this evaluation process or determination, remember I mentioned that it is possible at the meeting where we review the referral that we might determine eligibility right then and there. So either at that point or following the evaluation, the team is tasked with determining, is this student eligible for special education? And yes.
Después de el referido, como estaba diciendo la señora, viene la parte de decidir si el estudiante es elegible o no. Siempre se hace a través de una reunión y es el equipo, incluyendo el padre, que van a hacer esa decisión.
It's important to note that eligibility for special education is a school-based eligibility, and it is different from a medical diagnosis.
Es importante recalcar que la elegibilidad es para recibir servicios dentro de la escuela y que no está relacionado con los servicios que puedan ser necesarios fuera de la escuela.
Eligibility is more general than a specific diagnosis. And one particular example that comes to mind is an individual with apraxia may be eligible for a speech language impairment, but we are not medical physicians or qualified to make diagnoses. We are qualified to consider areas of eligibility for special education. So in a case of a student with that circumstance, perhaps they are eligible for speech language, for special education through speech language impairment eligibility. I can repeat any of that.
Cabe recalcar que a veces los diagnósticos son diagnósticos médicos y no es la escuela que tiene que decidir si el estudiante va a recibir cierta tipo de beneficios para un estudiante, por ejemplo, que tuviera apraxia o algún otro diagnóstico médico, pero a través de las escuelas sí a ese estudiante se le puede dar servicios de habla y de lenguaje para ayudarlo con esa discapacidad médica.
And the team must decide if the student meets the definition of a child with disability.
Es el equipo el que tiene que decidir si el estudiante tiene si es elegible para los servicios.
These are each of the areas of eligibility. We often will talk about special education being a room with 13 doors, and a person who is eligible for special education walks through one door. However, they may be eligible in more than one area and could potentially walk through 2 or 3 or 4 doors. The door one walks through is their initial area of eligibility. But once you're in the room, you get what you need. And so, for example, if the door I walked through was specific learning disability, I may also have ADHD. My IEP will be written to support all of my needs as they relate to specific learning disability and ADHD and any other need that I have.
Entonces, cuando un estudiante, las áreas de elegibilidad son 13 y es como que un estudiante estuviera caminando y entrara en una de esas 13 puertas. Cada una de ellas son una discapacidad que califican a los estudiantes para recibir servicios. A veces los estudiantes pueden tener más de una discapacidad. Tienen una principal, como puede ser una discapacidad de aprendizaje, y a esa discapacidad se le puede agregar, tal vez si es elegible el estudiante, como por ejemplo que tenga déficit de atención e hiperactividad.
Thank you.
Bridget,
Yes.
why do you have deaf blindness? And then it seems repeated, you have a hearing one door and a visual impairment door.
Yes. So one is one or the other or both.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
that's both. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep. So you may have.
right.
You,
I get it now. I
Yeah.
was-
Okay.
It's right.
But yeah,
there.
it's a fair question. Fair question.
And you can't walk through 2 doors at the same time. So
Right. Right.
well, you've got both,
And
you walk through that door.
it becomes a conversation not just around individuals who have a visual impairment or a hearing impairment or are considered to be eligible through deaf blindness, but we have similar conversation for perhaps individuals who have who meet the criteria for autism and also emotional disturbance. So the question and the conversation will come up. What is the primary? You'll hear that phrase. What is the primary eligibility area? And truly, from the lens of special education, if you're in the room, you get what you need, no matter what your primary is.
So it's kind of you.
Puede que el estudiante tenga una discapacidad primaria y que tenga otra adicional, como que sea autista y que tenga una discapacidad emocional, un desorden emocional, pero va a tener una discapacidad primaria y luego la otra, y se le van a dar servicios para todo lo que necesite.
Forgive the typo at the top of this slide. It should say ineligibility, ineligible, and I will edit that. But it is important to note that a student may not be eligible if the determining reason is limited English proficiency. Remember, we evaluate in native language. And so we won't sit at a table and say that an individual is eligible for an IEP, thereby having a disability, if the special circumstance, the limiting reason is acquisition of
Yeah,
English.
that makes sense.
Also, a lack of appropriate instruction or math. We have to assure we've done that.
Entonces la señora explica que a veces el estudiante no califica para recibir servicios y la razón puede ser porque tenga una proficiencia limitada del idioma inglés, por ejemplo, porque recuerden que los estudiantes los tienen que evaluar en su idioma nativo.
If a student is determined to not be eligible, we are required to provide the parent with that reason in writing. That comes on a document called a record of meeting.
Si el estudiante se determina que no es elegible, hay que darle al padre la razón por escrito, por el motivo por el que no es elegible para recibir servicios.
Returning to our conversation about the protections for parents and the involvement of parents throughout this entire process. If the parents disagree with the decision, there are processes for them to file a complaint with the state, initiate mediation or due process. And similarly, if a student is found eligible and the parent disagrees, then parents also have the right to refuse that consent.
Es importante recalcar que si se determina que el estudiante no es elegible y los padres están en desacuerdo con esa decisión, siempre pueden contactar a alguien del Estado e ir a un proceso de mediación a ver si pueden tal vez cambiar la decisión. Y por el contrario, si es al revés, que creen que el niño es elegible y el padre no está de acuerdo, también pueden empezar un proceso legal.
And so this leads us to the conclusion of this workshop, which is, in this case, my student is eligible, now what? And these are the next steps. So we know that students are working with the data. They're drafting an IEP. Parents are providing their input. If we go back to the question about requesting, we were talking there about evaluations, but in this case, a parent can always request a draft of goals and objectives. That's very common every year at an annual review. It can be uncommon to request that in advance of an eligibility determination because we haven't decided if the student is eligible collectively. The school won't make that presumption without the parent present.
Can
Say it over again?
Yeah.
I know that. So once a student is eligible, we're going to begin to draft the IEP. And so parents can always ask for drafts of goals and objectives, which are part of the IEP.
Una vez que se determina que el estudiante es elegible, van a empezar a escribir su plan de estudio individualizado y los padres siempre pueden pedir con anticipación un ensayo de lo que van a ser las metas y los objetivos.
When a student is eligible every year, it's very common for a parent to ask for those draft goals and objectives to be part of the conversation developing them.
Que es común cuando hay reuniones de planeamiento anuales que los padres pidan con anticipación un ensayo de esas metas y objetivos para poder prepararse para la reunión y tener preguntas o inquietudes.
With initial eligibility, the first eligibility, that isn't as common because we wouldn't want to presume the child eligible without the parent being part of that conversation.
Cuando es una reunión inicial que se va a determinar si el estudiante va a recibir servicios o no, o qué tipos de servicios, que eso no es tan común porque todavía no se ha hecho la determinación, entonces los padres no piden las metas y los objetivos.
When that meeting is over, the family will receive the IEP and it will be implemented.
Una vez que se termina en la reunión de planeamiento, a los padres le van a dar una copia por escrita del plan individualizado de estudio para sus estudiantes.
At our next workshop, we're going to go through an entire IEP part by part by part.
En nuestra próxima reunión vamos a abordar lo que es un plan individualizado de estudio parte por parte.
And so I just am going to ask Deirdre to click through these slides. There is also a 504 plan, which is an accommodation plan, and I offer you a comparison for reference.
También hay planes que se llaman 504, que son planes de acomodaciones.
IEPs have both accommodations and modifications, where a 504 will be strictly accommodations.
Los programas individualizados de estudio tienen acomodaciones modificaciones, mientras que los programas 504 solo tienen acomodaciones.
This is our ongoing list of resources for families that we will add to, and these are live links.
Estos son enlaces en vivo que ustedes pueden usar también como recursos.
These are a series of slides from the last presentation related to PPT. Our district has initiated a parent survey. This is another way that Norwalk has decided that it is important to engage families in our collaborative process. This is a link that you would use after your PPT to give us feedback on your thoughts and impressions and feelings about the opportunity for you to be a meaningful participant in the PPT. We want to ensure we're doing the right work right. And if we have opportunities to improve, we look for our families to help us know what those opportunities are so that we can address them. And this is one way the district's doing that.
Comes to you or?
So the results of the survey come directly to me, and then I share them with school teams to improve practice. It isn't, I wouldn't ever say, oh, Deirdre had a PPT and, oh, you know, she's not happy with you. It's not an evaluative tool. This is a supportive survey to help us be better at our practice holistically.
A los padres se les da una evaluación luego de tener una reunión de planeamiento para que el distrito y la señora que es administradora sepa cómo ellos pueden mejorar sus prácticas y si el padre está satisfecho con lo que se compartió en la reunión, de la forma que lo hicieron y si hay alguna forma que puedan mejorar sus servicios.
Our invitation to join SPED PAC and a survey for this evening. Are there any other questions?
Es un cuestionario por la presentación de hoy.
In the chat.
That we can preserve confidentiality.
I
So one of the
know,
arms.
I know. If my child's pediatrician refers my child that he needs more services daily and the school is not going for that, what can I do?
Good question. Will you close it out, Deirdre? So the question was, the pediatrician is recommending more services, and I'm hearing that perhaps the school is in disagreement. And the question is, what can I do? I would ask that if a formal PPT has not occurred in these cases, in any similar case, if there's any question or disagreement of any kind, that first that the family request a PPT and come to the table and have a formal discussion. I would encourage inviting the pediatrician to come to that meeting as well and engage in that collaborative conversation as to whether or not the concerns are impacting school and if it requires a young person's specialized instruction. Sometimes, and I don't know this circumstance, and I do want to speak in generalities, there may be a medical concern that requires an accommodation through that 504 plan that I realized we glanced over as that wasn't really the topic, but I refer you back to that document. Oftentimes, any medical concerns can be accommodated to provide a student access to school.
La señora dice que el primer paso es hacer una reunión de planeamiento PPT y que en esa reunión ustedes pueden traer al médico o a la persona que cree que necesita más servicios o una carta de estas personas que a veces tienen un diagnóstico médico. Entonces en la escuela, además de los servicios o en vez de los servicios, pueden tener un plan de acomodamiento para el estudiante.
Possible that the concerns don't fall within the realm of concern of the PPT. So if the student already has an IEP, I should clarify, that is when the PPT should be called. If there's a concern about a suspected disability, the PPT should be called. And otherwise, conversations with the school team, with the principal, should occur, exploring that idea of an accommodations plan.
Que estas conversaciones tienen que ocurrir con las personas encargadas de que trabajan directamente con tu hijo o con el director de la escuela, de que tu hijo necesita puede necesitar ciertas acomodaciones.
And if the need is such that any family feels that they aren't experiencing a collaborative process, which I certainly hope is not the case at any of the schools, please do reach out to either the administrator of the school, the special education administrator, myself. We will do all that we can to repair any harm, to restore faith, and work collaboratively moving together for all young people.
Que siempre te puedes comunicar con los administradores, ya sea de tu escuela o del programa de educación especial, que ellos siempre van a estar disponibles para escuchar tu caso y si hay algo que ellos hicieron que no estuvo bien, siempre están dispuestos a corregirlo o a sentarse en una mesa abierta con el padre y trabajar todos juntos hacia el progreso de ese estudiante. What I think I heard from this parent is that the student is already getting services and she would like him to get services more often or daily. That's the word that
I
she
see.
used.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Maybe
Yeah.
he's not getting them every day, but twice a week, but she would like him to get them daily, and the pediatrician agrees to that.
So that would be appropriate to discuss at the PPT. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
I appreciate it because I didn't answer it directly.
Es apropiado traerlo a la mesa en una reunión de planeamiento.
Another
Yes,
question?
Bridget. Thank you.
Yes,
You're welcome.
Dee, I'm gonna have you click on it, but do it as fast as you can. I think it's broadcasting.
It's not.
Parents.
It's not.
Oh, it's not?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Went onto YouTube.
Okay, great. Oh, absolutely. Call me anytime.
I got one more question.
Sure.
In regards to compensatory services
Mhm.
for a staff member that literally does not exist, like they just are having a hard time filling the position.
Huh?
At a certain point, what do you think should be done when you're at? I mean, we've already had a conversation personally, but just
Yeah.
from a district perspective, like, what are we gonna do about some of these things that are not able to happen because there's physically no one there
Sure.
to provide these services, and what can parents expect?
Sure, that's a great question, and I think it's really important. So there is a difference between makeup service and compensatory service. And so we do want to make sure that we're clarifying the difference when, from the school's perspective, we're engaging in the conversation. So compensatory services are typically those that through a state complaint or a systemic complaint or mediation due process, the state is compelling us to make up those services. We're on notice, we've been told. Norwalk works so hard to fulfill all missed services so that we don't have to put our parents in that position. It happens. It's a reality of special education. Missed services, however, accrue, and I know that you know some of this from our conversations, but just for the good of the order, missed services happen when a service provider is absent for a day, an extended period of time, or if we have a vacancy that we're holding. Should I stop?
No,
You can tap me at any point,
No.
okay?
Can you go over it again? So makeup is just one.
Makeup services are when the district recognizes somebody's absent and we owe services because they've been missed. Compensatory are the state putting us on notice, yes, saying we have to provide corrective action. We as, okay, go, yes.
Ujú. Entonces, la señora está hablando, la pregunta era que si un estudiante no había recibido los servicios a tiempo, ya sea porque no hay suficiente personal o el personal tuvo que irse temporariamente y los servicios no están siendo recibidos. Entonces, el distrito le da la compensación de esos servicios al estudiante con tal vez un poco de atraso, pero se los da. Ahora, en la compensación o servicios compensatorios ya tiene otra connotación que es legal, que es cuando los padres ya toman acción legal y van a hacer una queja al Estado y quieren que les den esos servicios que no les han dado a los estudiantes, y que el distrito siempre trata de que no se llegue a ese punto donde tengan que tomar ninguna acción legal y resolverlo antes de otra forma.
So in Norwalk, we have a published process that we follow. Thank you so much. When we have a vacancy or an extended absence, we notify our families when that occurs, and we begin accounting for all missed services. Recognizing this is not ideal. Ideal would be having the people. And I'm going to take this opportunity because we're live and being recorded. If you or someone you know a physical therapist who would love to work in a fantastic district, Norwalk Public Schools currently does have vacancy in the area of physical therapy. Our principals have sent notice. We have also just brought on board people in the areas of occupational therapy and adaptive physical education, because these are areas that we have been struggling to fill in the current vacancy climate. We are really well positioned in that we have 2 special education vacancies currently, and that is all. 2 is still too many, but comparatively, we're in good shape and we're covering our special education services. But in the cases where we are accruing and accounting missed services, there are different things that can occur. We work with the family first and foremost. We assess the impact on progress. There are times where we will contract with outside providers to help us to fill the vacancy or the need or the service at the time. And we'll also talk with families about who their current providers are if they have home providers, and we'll collaborate with them to bring them into a temporary place where they can provide services, or we can become responsible for the financial obligation there.
La señora está hablando en el caso de que pasa a veces que no tienen profesionales para trabajar con los estudiantes, como en este momento están buscando gente en el área de terapia física o terapia ocupacional y servicios adaptivos. En ese caso, ellos trabajan junto con la familia, y si el estudiante tiene algún proveedor de servicios fuera de la escuela, a veces se trabaja con ese profesional a ver si pueda venir a la escuela y le puedan pagar y darle servicios al estudiante dentro de la escuela. Pero siempre se hace un arreglo con las familias para poder darles esos servicios a los estudiantes.
The last piece I would add is we also work with our state partners. We're incredibly lucky in that we've been granted service from the state in some regard. The state is offered and is in the process of completing evaluations for us in areas where we have need.
And when you say state, are you referencing things like groups like the CES or
Yes,
ACEs.
adjacently, specifically the Connecticut State Department of Education has a program where they've identified that districts have this need to bring evaluators in to help us during the shortage. And so we request a certain number of evaluations that the state pays for and grants us. And many of those evaluators come from the RESC Alliance, ACEs,
Yes.
CES, correct?
I am the liaison to CES in Trumbull, and so I'm just sharing that I
Call them
know
and see
they
if they have a physical therapist.
Okay,
It is an area the state doesn't have physical therapists. We're reaching out to hospitals. We're doing everything that we can to consider ways
I'll talk
to deliver these services. And we are anticipating onboarding a physical therapist.
I heard
in
that on
months to-
Thanksgiving.
Yes, it's not soon enough, but it's soon enough. It's better than
Just
visible.
how many do you need?
Well, given the need to make up, we certainly need 2 at this time. And
Okay.
we
good. I
won't
just
turn
thought-
anybody away.
I will.
And if they're looking for work, all of our neighbors and all of the towns are looking.
Right, okay, so
Yes.
I will talk to Chip tomorrow.
Great, thank you so much.
I mean, I
Thank
don't
you.
know, but I know they do. They do support us. in many ways.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hay escasez de terapistas físicos, los están buscando y la señora dice que muchas veces el Estado ayuda a los distritos a proveer a estas personas o a evaluadores o otras personas que proveen servicios. Una agencia que se llama CES nos ha ayudado mucho. Pero terapistas físicos son más difíciles de conseguir, entonces la señora va a ayudar para que los consigamos.
All right.
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who came out and tuned in for the meeting tonight. Thank you for interpretation services. Mariela, thank you very much, and our Haitian Creole as well.
Yes.
Thank you for interpreting for us. And Bridget, thank you as always for all the information, tremendous information. I think that it's vital and important that we get this out and to as many people as possible, really make people feel comfortable in the process as much as we can. So I think it's very valuable what we're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank
Extra
you.
time.
Happy belated birthday to you.
Thank you.
We are so grateful for this opportunity. This is a really unique format, and it's not without its technological challenges, but thank you to everyone for staying tuned in and joining us here, and really for the opportunity to make our subcommittee reachable to our families. I'm truly grateful for that.
Yes.
Muchas gracias a todos por haber participado hoy. La señora le dan las gracias y por tener paciencia, por usar este nuevo modelo, que es donde las familias pueden venir aquí y participar en persona o también pueden hacerlo remotamente. Es un modelo híbrido y ella les da las gracias por su paciencia, por las dificultades para implementar un modelo nuevo, y espera verlos en la próxima sesión.
Thank you very much. And Mary Ellen, you think meeting adjourned?
Meeting adjourned. Okay.
All right. Thank you.